harashim hamitmanim al yedei tzibur, the heads that are being appointed by the people. Verodim bahem, and these heads, I mean, he's calling it head, can be a president, can be a governor, can be a prime minister, can be it, but we vote for them. Verodim bahem baparech, and they turn against them and use them against them, and they control them. Vekiyumam umemshaltam ubechozek gadol, and their existence and their memshala, their govern, how they govern the world, bechozek gadol, with great strength. Ve'inun kaimin al Israel klei Hamas, and they're controlling the nation of Israel. How? Al yedei klei Hamas, with klei Hamas is weapons. Unbelievable. Vehainu, here he says something interesting, because if you remember at the time of the generation of the flood, it says that there was a lot of Hamas. Now Hamas is not the terror organization in Gaza. Hamas means robbery, stealing. That there was a lot of stealing at the time. And here he says, when they're controlling the nation of Israel with Klei Hamas, Hainu shechomsim et mamonam, that they steal their wealth. Hitler, Yimach Shimo v'zichro, was Zera Amalek, came directly from Amalek. One of the things besides killing, they robbed everything. Property, gold, money, everything. Unbelievable. Ve'alayhu itmar, and on them it says, on this generation of the flood, Ki mal'a ha'aretz chamas mipneihem. On that generation of the flood, it says that the land increased with robbery and gezel and theft and so forth. Ve'shorosh nishmatam midor Amabul, and the root of the souls of these Amalekim, it's at the time of the flood. Shelo nizdakechu, that they weren't cleansed and purified. Ve'nesa ha'erev rav, and they became this great mixture of multitude, erev rav. Ve'lachem einam manhigim et Yisrael berachamim, and therefore they do not. The word is using manhigim. If a prime minister in Israel is a leader, it's called a manhig. How is he? What's his verb? Controlling? It's not controlling. Directing, governing. In Hebrew it says manhigim. Manhig is a leader. Right now we have a lot of leaders in Israel. And if a prime minister is a leader, it's called a manhig, who manhig et ha'am. He governs them, he controls them. But here he says, Einam manhigim et Yisrael berachamim. It's not done with love. It's not done with kindness. It's not done with mercy. Inun Amalekim. These are the Amalekim. Min harishon. This is the first of all 5 Erev Rav, and there are the strong ones, the Amalekim. But what is he telling you there in other words? These are the rulers, the leaders of Israel. These are Amalekim. That's why they come out with all these laws. If you put tefillin on, half a year imprisonment. You have to marry gay couples. We have to do a gay pride in Yerushalayim. And to walk with the flag of Israel in Yerushalayim, you're not allowed to. A young girl was assaulted and arrested for walking with a flag. And don't take my words out of context. The flag that they're going here in Israel, that's an evil flag. Has nothing to do with Judaism, by the way. The white flag and the Magen David, it's not even the Magen David, it's actually the wrong term to say, the Star of David. It's not the Star of David, by the way. Maybe we have to go to do a lot of classes about that. That's the flag that we have of Medinat Israel. That's an evil flag. It even has hypnotic powers in it, that if you notice that every time that a president, a prime minister, a general, they're all talking, there's always the Israeli flag in the back. Why? Because it has hypnotic powers, because they're using the triangles upside down. It's not the right way. This is not a holy symbol, by the way. It was holy at one time, it got misused, and now they're telling everybody the Star of David, the Star of David. It's not true, that wasn't his star. It was completely different. The Star of David has 5 tzlaot, how do you call them, angles, not 6. But the point is, that I'm just throwing it out there as a bomb. We'll have to maybe do some class about that. But when the Zionism, which is 100% Amalek, by the way, don't mix it. People will get very offended because they say, I'm Zionist. No, you're not. You love Israel. You are pro-Israel. You are a patriot. Don't call yourself a Zionist, because Zionism is saying and declaring, I'm against God. I'm going to uproot the Torah. That's the movement of Zionism. They took the holy word. No, Zion is one of the names of Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim has 7 names. One of them is called Zion. Uveshuvcha leTzion berachamim. They took this holy word and they distorted it. Everything that has to do with Amalek, you'll find 3 letters, Yud Vav Nun, in them. And Yud Vav Nun is Yavan. Yavan is Greece. This is the Klippa of Yavan. Everything that you'll find Amalek in it, you'll find the letters Yud Vav Nun in it. And one of them is Zion. Right? So every word that you find, even like, there's something, I'm going to sidetrack a little bit. There's something that is called Tarbut Yavan, the culture of Greece. That's the culture that Antiochus came to oppose on us, to destroy us. He didn't tell you, Antiochus says, I'm not killing you. I want you lihit yaven. I want you to become like us. I don't want you to do circumcision. I don't want you to celebrate the month, the rejuvenation of the month. I don't want you to do all the Shabbat. You can be regular people. You can go and learn your Torah. It's a wisdom. It's we have our wisdom. But the tarbut, the culture of Yavan, if you remember, I gave a long class about it. I'm not going to sidetrack on that. You can find the class when I was talking about Chanukah, but it's called Tarbut Yavan, the culture of Yavan. It came from the 3 cities of Yavan. One of them was Sparta, the concept of sport, idolizing the body, and so forth. But go look at that video. It's very, very powerful. It has to do with Chanukah, but it also gives you the idea of the culture of Yavan. And the Tzionim, which of course has the Yud Vav Nun in them, which I gave another class about that. You can find them all in the series of Chanukah. Why it's a small Yud, a middle Vav, and a long Nun. It's these lines that are going down. The Yud of Hashem, what they do is they pull it down to the Klippa, so the Yud becomes a Nun, a very underneath the surface. But you'll find everything with the Yud and Vav and Nun in it. Why? Because the Amalek, we're going to see now how the Erev Rav, not all of them want to destroy us. Some of them, like Haman, wanted to destroy us. Haman was Zera Amalek. Zera means the offspring, a descendants. Hitler was Zera Amalek. But a lot of these rulers, they don't want to kill us. They just want us to leshakach Toratcha, to completely destroy the Torah. That's what's going on now in Eretz Israel, right? The regime, the government, the Zionism. That's not what people think. I'm Zionist. No, you're not. You're patriot. You love Israel. Don't mix these 2 terms. And they did it in such a professional way that people think that Zionism is pro-Israel. Zionism is, in other words, erase the Torah. We do not want the Torah. You know what David Ben-Gurion says? You have to read all the memoirs of all these leaders, Ben-Gurion and Jabotinsky and Herzl. Everybody thinks they're so pro-Torah. They are against the Torah. Ben-Gurion said when he became prime minister, within a few years, Orthodox Jews are only going to be found in a museum. Their plan was to bring the whoever was remaining to this land and to completely obliterate the Torah. No Torah, we don't want Torah here. So when the Sephardi's Jews came in the 50s, they cut their peot, took their yarmulkes off, threw them into schools, of course taught them all the junk that they're teaching, but they didn't want to have anything to do with Torah here. Now, how would you fool the Jews to come here? Then you have to give everything Torah symbols. And if it has Torah symbols, then it will look very convincing. So all the songs of the Zionisms are all psukim from Tehillim, by the way. Right? They're all Tehillim. So, oh, wow, we're singing Tehillim. But they're cut with not the whole pasuk. And not only that, so they say, okay, how are we going to make our flag? Let's make our flag look like a talit. And if you turn the flag upside down, it looks like the stripes of the talit. And let's put a Jewish symbol on it. But most people don't know about it. I think we should make a few classes about that, because there were great rabbis that were very against the Star of David. And one of them was the Lubavitcher Rebbe, by the way. He never agreed ever to have the Star of David anywhere that has to do with Chabad. And not all the Chabad people know that even. You know that there's a story that the Lubavitcher Rebbe himself came to one of the summer camps of the girls in the upstate New York, and there was a Star of David in the entrance of the camp, and he told his secretary, remove this. before I'm coming in. Remove the star. And the only time he allowed to have a star was on the floor in the Knesset in Brooklyn, where he would step on it. And even most of the Lubavitchers don't even know about that. And you have it on all the synagogues, Star of David everywhere. And it's not only the Lubavitcher Rebbe, there are many other great rabbis that were very against it. We don't want the symbol here. Everybody has it, thinking that that's a holy symbol. It was a holy symbol. I have to teach you the whole history, because a lot of people pull it from different books, that you see the symbol, books of Kabbalah, it was misused, and it lost its Kedusha. But to make a long story short, we're totally sidetracking, but it's extremely important that we know who we're dealing with. Because everything in Israel is Tarbut Yavan, to bring us to idolize our body, sports, and they brought to Israel malls. We never had malls. When I grew up, we didn't have malls. And a mall in Hebrew is kenyon. And what do you find in the word kenyon? Yud Vav Nun. Is the culture that we're going and shopping, and I'm spending all my money on how I look, and I have to have name tags, not name tags, how do you call it, like brands and all that. That's not a Jewish culture. That's a Greek culture. To be dressed beautiful. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being dressed nice, but not to pay 1,000 shekel for a t-shirt that costs $1 to create, but it has a symbol on it. That's Tarbut Yavan. That's the culture of Greece. No God. No foundation of the Torah. And the entire, I don't want to say Jewish, but the entire Zionist movement in Israel is to uproot the Torah. No Torah. We don't want you to learn Torah. I grew up in Israel. I know how it is. In the public schools, they taught us that the Torah is a hoax. That it's not even a correct history. And it's all customs and it's all fairy tales. But that's the plan of the Zionism. And a lot of people, when I'm talking about that, they say, I'm Zionist. I love Israel. I love Israel too, but you love the land of Israel. You love Eretz Israel. You love the nation of Israel. The government? This evil regime? Bnei Amalek? It says here clearly all the government was going to be Amalek. Now, it doesn't mean that Bibi Bennett and all these other clowns are actually Zera Amalek. But there's no question that their soul is trapped by the Erev Rav. And they're acting on behalf of them, either for greed of money or jealousy. And look now at Bennett. I don't want to get into politics right now. He wasn't even elected. It's like a Biden. He has 6 mandatim. How can he become a prime minister? Rak lo Bibi. Not that I'm a great fan of Bibi, but everything against Bibi. I mean, the whole thing that you're looking at the politics in Israel, what's going on here? Forget about the fact now that the entire government of Israel is managed and run by a deep state coming out from outside of Israel. But, and it's all connected to what we're learning now, because we're learning about the Erev Rav. The Erev Rav is against Hashem. Anything against Hashem. How come, with everything that you see now, the police is brutal and aggressive and violent against the religious people? But when it comes to Arabs, when we had now the riots, did you see the police doing anything? No. But when a few Orthodox guys go out to the street and they demonstrate quietly, they get beaten up, they get attacked. The whole time of the corona, all the synagogues were attacked. Not other people. People in Tel Aviv were walking freely. So you see the regime in Israel, in the country, in the government, it's all against the Torah. And now a lot of people say, what are you talking about? We have religious parties in the Knesset. Well, I'm not going to say too much. But the fact that a person is wearing a beard, that doesn't mean he's religious. And the fact that a person has a yarmulke or whatever, it doesn't mean anything. And a beard takes a year to grow. Because a person is dressed with a yarmulke and a black suit, it means that he's observant. Torah has nothing to do with politics. So a lot of people say, but we need the power in the government. You don't need nothing. It's corruption. It's money and control. I'm not going to talk too much. People get very, very offended. But I can tell you that to be in the government, you have to be corrupt. It doesn't work together. You cannot be a rabbi and in the government. It doesn't work together. When Mashiach is going to come, we're going to have a Knesset Israel. We're going to have a Sanhedrin. This is not going to be mixed with Arabs and women and balagan and lying. And not that I have anything else. It has nothing to do with women. I'm just saying Sanhedrin is only men. What we want to take from this, because we're definitely not going to go through the 5 groups today, we're just going to have to conclude with the Amalek, but I'm going to read again what it says here. Ve'inun kaimin al Israel kli Hamas, and they're controlling the nation of Israel with his weapons and or taking their money. And it says on them that the entire land was increasing in robbery and theft. And what do you think now the government officials are doing? Not only in Israel, everywhere. They're all sitting on millions. Where do you have millions of dollars from? Because they're stealing it from somewhere. That's exactly what Hamas means to steal. Look at Ehud Barak. And a lot of people will say, Lashon hara, not Lashon hara, it's not Lashon hara. Ehud Barak was the chief of staff of Israel, right? So it means that from the age of 18, he was a soldier. How much does a soldier earn in the army for 40 years? And then he became an MK, and then he became a prime minister. Forget about it that he's best friends with Epstein and all this, the rest of the junk. I say no more. But you know how many property the guy has in Tel Aviv? The guy's like a millionaire. Where do you have so much money from? No, that's my business. Go do whatever you want. No, so they say he went and gave some lectures around the world. Okay, so you gave some lectures. So you made $100,000. You made $500,000. How do you own dozens of properties in Tel Aviv? Houses that are worth millions of dollars, unless you stole the money somehow. When you have control, when you're the chief of staff in the army. I was in the Israeli army. You know what I saw? And it's not about bad-mouthing anybody, and I'm not judging anybody. But when we were in Lebanon, we would be transferred from Israel into Lebanon, right? Because we had to guard there. So you know what an open border it was? You know how much drugs came through the borders? And who do you think are the big drug dealers? All the generals and the colonels, because you have immunity. Just throw it in the jeep and you... I saw things with my own eyes. Don't you think we did that as soldiers? Smuggling cigarettes? And of course, if we would get caught, you go to jail. We would smuggle cigarettes and all sorts of other things. But there are some times we would see undercover cars going in the border. Of course, we would be told this is special units. Special units. It's a general putting in some cars, putting there 100 kilos of cocaine through the border. You have immunity from the army. Now, I'm not saying everybody's like that, but I saw with my own eyes a lot of things because when the border is open, you do whatever you want. When you have power, when you have control, you do almost whatever you want. So when it says here that the Erev Rav, they would steal from the people, don't you think the government is stealing from us? They're stealing from us in a legal way. They're calling it taxes or fines or all sorts of other things. I have a friend now who wants to come to Israel. He says, I don't want to come to Israel. They're forcing me to take 3 corona tests, and it's going to cost me $250. I have to pay for that. I have to pay for that. I don't want to be tested 3 times and blood taken from me. It's like a scam. It's a scam to make money. Oh, it's unheard of to pay $180 for a test. Then it'll cost 2 shekels. What are you testing? Why $180? Anyways, there's a lot more what to say. Let's continue. And then he says, the Amalek, Shorish Nishmatam Midor Amabul, the root of their soul comes from the generation of the flood, and they weren't cleansed or clean, V'ne'esa Erev Rav, and they became an Erev Rav. V'lachen enam manigim et Yisrael barachamim, and therefore they're controlling Israel, being vicious and brutal. No mercy. I don't see any mercy coming from our government. Ilen inun Amalekim. These are the Amalekim for you. This is the first, he calls it mean, the species, the first species of the Erev Rav, Amalekim. The vicious ones, the dangerous ones. And these are the ones who are controlling us right now. Now, if they're controlling the land of Israel, they're controlling everything, by the way. Because the land of Israel is controlled not by the Israeli government. These are all puppets. And even a lot of them could be that they're good people. They might be do tshuva. Half of them are not even Jewish, by the way. I'm not talking only about the Arabs, even the ones who pretend to be Jewish. You know, one of the greatest leaders in Israel's history, who was a general, who was a prime minister, Ariel Sharon, he's not even Jewish. His mother's like a Polish immigrant that came to Israel. His father was Jewish. His mother wasn't even Jewish. He was a prime minister of Israel. So half of the people who are sitting in the Knesset are not even Jewish. Not only in the Knesset, in many other things. Here it's talking about the manhigim. The manhigim, the rulers, can be not only in the Knesset, can be the CEOs of all big banks and big companies, and the mishmash that we have here. Forget about how they're bringing into Israel now. China owns a few of the biggest companies in Israel. Tnuva, The biggest company for dairy products in Israel was bought by the Chinese. Why is selling our company to the Chinese? They sold to the Chinese 1,000,000 dunam. Dunam is a fourth of an acre. 1,000,000 dunam in the Negev is sold to the Chinese. Why is selling our land to the Chinese? The port in Haifa was sold to a Chinese company. My port, where I pay taxes for every little thing that I buy, I pay meches. Did you notice that? How much taxes you pay on meches? And who's it going to fund the Chinese to control my products? I mean, the whole thing that's going here is a scam. But I know I get all hyper now and excited by all this, but it can drive you nuts. But I tell you what can drive you nuts: the fact that people are so gullible and naive and say, "Why are you talking like that? Bibi is a great guy. He fought for Israel." Okay, so he fought for Israel. Doesn't mean he didn't turn, the Torah says, Kesef Yaver and Tzadikim, the money will blind the eyes of righteous people. Nobody goes to politics because for their love of, like Bennett says, I love the people, I serve the people. Shakran, liar. You don't serve anybody, you serve your own ego and your own pocket. So we see here clearly the Erev Rav is controlling, and again, just to make something clear, it doesn't mean that a lot of them are a neshama of Erev Rav, a soul of Erev Rav, but definitely is trapped by the klipa and controlled, manipulated, sometimes threatened, sometimes hypnotized to follow orders and so forth. And when I'm constantly saying Israel, but one of the main reasons that Israel is the focus of the mess, because Israel is the center of the world. And if we're having problems in Israel, it's rippling to the entire world. Not for nothing, this little country that technically should be left alone, we are like in the headlines of the entire world. We are the thorn in the eyes of the world. Why? Because from here, everything goes out from here. So when it comes to the Erev Rav, here it's talking that it's controlling Israel. It's controlling everything. And we're going to continue with the rest of the 5 groups. I told you, Nephilim, Giborim, Anakim, Refim, and Amalekim. Now we just explained about the Amalek. Sorry that it went too long. We're going to have to do another class tomorrow about the rest. I don't know, we read a few lines here. It took us an hour and a half. But I told you, this might turn into a book. But the point that we want to at least to conclude from now is, first we know where they're rooted from. Then we know that these are, and this is an important thing, Inun Reshin Bekiyuma Sage. These are the heads of everything that have been appointed by the people. And not only in Israel, everywhere. The joke is that the people think they vote for them. Probably almost any election, now you saw it with your own eyes, that the elections are rigged. All the elections are rigged. Because it's all one big show. One time the Republicans take it, one time the Democrats take it, one time they take it. Same thing in Israel, same junk. They say in Hebrew, same ladies, different dress. Yota giveret b'shinui aderet. I say same junk, different day. But the point that we want to take from that this Erev Rav, this part of Amalek, are the rulers, and I don't know if I'm using the right word, because in Hebrew it says manhigim. Manhig is like a ruler, a president, a prime minister, a king, a chief of staff, generals, CEOs, presidents, and so forth. Excuse me? Well, high-ranking managers. Like if you're looking in the army, then it won't necessarily be colonels, will be generals and up. If it's going to be in companies, CEOs of Chevrat Chashmal, the energy company in Israel. The biggest corruption. I don't even know how people fall for that. They're putting all these chimneys all over Israel, saying it's a power plant. They're not doing any electricity there. They're not doing nothing. They're doing pollution there and stealing our money. So, because they're not producing electricity in these power plants. The electricity is produced in many other different ways. Now they're trying to do solar panels. But Telsa clearly showed how you make electricity from air. Why do you need all these power plants? It's to pretend that they're doing electricity, so they can rob us from our money every month with the electricity bill. And if you chas v'shalom don't pay electricity bill, boom, you're in darkness. When you come up with the chutzpah to put me in darkness, how if you overcharge me hundreds of shekels every month for electricity that you don't even create? You understand the hoax? And then you see the pollution. You know what pollution these power plants are doing? And of course, many people will roll their eyes. What are you talking about? But that's the truth. Very soon the truth is all going to be served to you on a silver platter. Better to start chewing it right now, where you're going to start figuring out that everything is a hoax. Pay for electricity. And even if I should pay for some service, 30 shekels. Sometimes people pay 3,000, 4,000 shekels electricity bills. For what? For a few light bulbs? What am I running here? A factory? Where are you coming up with all these kilowatts? Biggest fraud ever. So why am I saying that? Because a CEO of a company like that, that's also a Rav. They don't know what's going on there, what they're not walking. Try to go for a siyur, to a route in one of the power plants. They're not going to let you in. It's guarded with gates, with barbed wire fences and patrol. Why? Why are you guarding the power plants like it's a secret military base? Because there's nothing really there. And you don't want me to come in and see that really you're not doing nothing there. Just pollution. And that's one example out of many, by the way. Almost everything is a hoax. Communication companies, and so all the heads of everything, that's part of the Erev Rav. Somebody sent me a documentary about some big companies in Israel, some corruption of a few, billionaires in Israel, and how they own all the banks and they own the newspapers and you see the documentary is done so smart, and you see how it's all a game. How they appoint in all the right offices, the right people, so they're protected from anywhere, and this bank gives them this loan, and you're talking about loans, about billions of shekels of loans, because the head of this bank is a friend of this, and it's all one big show. And who's the one who's paying it? We. When we're being slaughtered with taxes and electricity bills and water bill and gas bill and arnona, and this hoax arnona. What are you doing? You're taking out the garbage? For that I'm paying you 3,000 shekels. What are you doing here? Building a kikar? You know how much money the arnona brings into the city? Why do you need all this money? Where is this money? I don't see anything going on in the city. So to say, city taxes. I don't see anything. Do you see anything going on here? Besides some flowers in one of the merry-go-rounds there? Are you buying flowers for 1,000 shekels? That's it? You shut my mouth and you're taking the garbage out once a week? I don't see any culture going on here. I don't see any activities to the kids. I don't see anything. Do you see any public shelters here? Take this money, build public shelters. Do you have a shelter in your home? No. This is the whole city. Nobody has shelters here. What if there's going to be a bombing here? Do you have where to run to? Take the money of the arnona and build shelters. I want to see you building bomb shelters. Are you building me a kikar with a fountain of water? What are you fooling? Make even the quick math. 60, 70,000 residents, times that the arnona. Where's this money? How much does a merry-go-round like this cost? I mean, I know people don't understand what I'm talking about. The Tzfat residents, now every circle, they may make flowers and a fountain. Wow! The city of fountains now, everything is fountains. How much does the fountain cost? 10,000 shekels? Show me what you're doing with the money. It's all records you can't even see. Where is it going to? Education? No, it's not. The education is coming from the government. It's going for roads? No, it's not. The road is coming from the government. So what are you doing with my money? And if Chas v'Shalom I don't pay it, right away they seize the account. One time I didn't get the bill in the mail. They didn't charge my card because it was declined or something. They seized my bank account. What are you talking about? I pay like a good boy every month. Once time the credit card didn't work and you seized my bank account. The chutzpah is, I mean, the way how everything is run and managed. How is he saying here? Where was it? Einam manhigim et Yisrael berachamim. No mercy here. Strong hand like this. What is this? Stalin? And the sad part is that people fall for all this. They love the government, love the officials. Oh, Bibi! Maybe deep down inside he's a good guy. I don't know. Definitely controlled by the evil regime. Maybe blamed, maybe forced, maybe threatened. I don't know. Hypnotized. But the point is that we have Amalek, this Zera Amalek. And now, as the generation goes, Haman was tough hand, kill everybody, Hitler. Now it's always smiles. Tov. So just to conclude, So the first species, the first type, the first group of the Erev Rav is the Amalekim, that we see where the root comes from the semen, the seed that came out of Adam HaRishon in a form of impurity, not purity, got mixed with the good, had to go through the generation of the flood to get the first rinse, generation of the dispersion, second rinse, generation of Egypt, third rinse. The Kedusha went out into the 600,000 souls, but was left with a lot of junk, and that junk got attached to the nation of Israel. They went out with Mitzrayim with them. Ve'erev rav alu imahem, and this mixed multitude of the great mixed multitude came out with them, and for that came all the problems. But don't think that's where it started. As it says clearly here, it started at the time of the generation of dispersion, which after we finish the 7-month course about the Erev Rav will connect the generation of dispersion, how they come into to effect. And needless to say, it says here clearly that they survived all exiles. Amalek was never destroyed. And now we find Amalek now in all the key positions all around the world. And you have to remember, because the other Erev Rav that we're going to talk about, it's not politicians. It's other things that we're going to have to learn tomorrow, and maybe Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Sunday of next week, and Monday, Tuesday. But here is some of the leaders of the world. And I'm just going to say that as a side note, even though a lot of people might get upset of that, even in the religious leaders world, there's a lot of Erev Rav. Don't be fooled by beards and hats and all that. I know a lot of people don't like hearing that, but the hand of the Erev Rav is everywhere. It's in show business, it's in governments, it's in high tech, it's everywhere. And of course, it's in the Torah world. So we're going to read soon the rest of the Erev Rav, that even in the Torah world, the leaders, many leaders are Erev Rav. And they look like scholars, but needless to say, a lot of it is fake. Bottom line is, what do we do with it? And the great hope of all is that Mashiach is going to come and destroy them all. And get rid of all this junk. And the sad reality is that our leaders are all Amalek. They're all Erev Rav. It doesn't matter the intensity of 100%, not 100%, it's irrelevant. And then now, tomorrow and Sunday, we'll see already the rest of the Erev Rav, and at the end, of course, we can draw the conclusion and see what we're going to do with it. Mezad Hashem till then, Hashem should have mercy on us and for the rest of the world, and hopefully Mashiach will come faster than we can think of, and kill and uproot the Zera Amalek and destroy it, and we'll see all the good things that we're going to end up seeing with the coming of Mashiach. Tov.